Welcome to the Property Investors Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an upload. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Enjoy this week's show and don't forget to share it with all your friends.
Welcome to the Property Investors Podcast. My name's Ricky Mandal.
I'm Russell Leeds.
And on this week's show, we're going to be talking everything about the Property Investors Mediation Service, also known as PIMS. And we have a very special guest for this episode. I've invited them on specifically for this because I thought it'd be great to hear from one of the founders of PIMS. And that special guest is Mr. Russell Leeds.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, you don't do it every week, but I thought I'd invite you on this week because Russell is one of the founders alongside his brother, Samuel Leeds, of PIMS. And this week we thought it'd be a good idea to go through what PIMS is, how it works, and the ins and outs of it. So I've prepared, if it's okay with you, I've prepared a few questions. In fact, for this podcast, I was thinking I might even just act as if I don't know anything about PIMS and just ask you questions from a neutral position to get a bit more of an insight.
So you're going to act as though you're someone that's completely clueless?
I'll just be myself. So I'll just be myself and be completely clueless throughout this episode. And I've prepared some questions.
I was going to say, you're going to have to do some hardcore acting then, aren't you?
Let me get my acting face on. All right, so the first question is, so Russell, as a property entrepreneur, such as a deal sourcer or a rent-to-renter, firstly, PIMS and redress schemes and insurances, this is all part of compliance. So why do you need, as a deal sourcer or a rent-to-renter, why do you need compliance?
Okay, that's a good question. So in essence, because deal sourcing and rent-to-renters, they're relatively new things, right?
Yeah.
So whenever there's something new that comes into the industry, it's always difficult to how it fits in with things like legalities and compliance, and you have to sort of change. So what basically happened when deal sourcing and rent-to-rent came in is they were acting as, they said deal sourcers are acting as estate agents. And they said, and rent-to-renters are acting as letting agents. So kind of the generic sort of wisdom and what people were saying was, if you're a deal sourcer, you're acting as an estate agent, therefore you have to be compliant like an estate agent.
Right.
And if you are doing rent-to-rent, you're acting as a letting agent, therefore you have to be compliant as a letting agent. Now, when I was, a few years ago now, I actually used to own and run a letting agency. And the compliance in the property space, it's quite a lot. It's quite complicated and the repercussions are quite serious as well. So for example, if you're a letting agent and you are not a member of, like you mentioned, the PRS or the property ombudsman, you can get a hefty fine. I think it's about £5,000 fine. And there's other compliance, whereas if you break it, you can actually go to prison. I'm sure you've seen stories of self-managing landlords that are putting people, especially with HMOs and things like that, where they're renting out rooms that shouldn't be rented out and putting people in difficult living conditions, and they end up going to prison and having massive fines. So if you're in this space, there is a lot of compliance. I think the reason for that is because we're dealing with people's homes here.
Yeah.
And if you're acting unethically or unfairly, it's quite serious. But I've always thought it was a bit weird that when you're a deal seller, for example, you're acting as an estate agent, because really you're not actually, an estate agent sells a house. So it's important when they're selling a house that, for example, there's no money laundering going on, because we're talking, massive figures here. But when you're a deal seller, you're actually selling information, right? You're not an estate agent, you're not selling a house, you're selling information. So all you're doing is you're linking an investor with an estate agent who's got all the compliance. So I always thought it was weird that you had to have the compliance to pass the details on to this agent, who then had to have all the compliance again.
So when you say acting as an estate agent or acting as a letting agent, what determines whether you're acting as that? Is it the structure of the company, like the SIT codes, or what is it?
Well, it's a little bit grey because it was a new industry. But yeah, so if a lot of deal sourcers would set up their SIT codes, so when they set up the company, they would say the company is an agent, right? And they'd use the SIT code for an estate agency. The other thing that would make you acting as an agent is the contracts that you use. Because if your contracts, you're saying that you're acting as an agent. Same with rent to rents. If you're doing rent to rents, and in your contracts you're saying that you are a property manager, then you are acting as a letting agent. So then you would have to be compliant as a letting agent.
Would you say that compliance overall in general, whether you're doing deal source or rent to rent, is compliance and insurances and these types of things, are they mandatory?
Well, yeah. I mean, compliance. If you're a letting agent, you're an estate agent. There is lots of mandatory requirements that if you don't act in a compliant way, and we'll get onto what that is shortly. If you don't act in a compliant way, then there are big repercussions, such as heavy fines. And like I said, depending on what you do, how badly you mess it up, you can even go to prison.
Yeah.
So it's pretty serious.
So why did you and Samuel set up the Property Investors Mediation Service?
So there's a few reasons. One of the reasons is that we were never convinced that when you are doing rent to rents and when you are doing deal selling, that you are acting as an estate agent letting agency. Right? So there was debates, and we've been speaking to our lawyers. We've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds with lawyers and barristers investigating it, because, I mean, for us, it's important because we are deal sellers and we are rent to renters. But what's more important, obviously, is, we run a training company, and we want to make sure that we're getting the best information to our students. That was one of the reasons. We're never sure. But the main reason is, one of the ways you've got to be compliant, like you mentioned earlier, is you've got to join the PRS and the Property Ombudsman. The problem is, the PRS and the Property Ombudsman are both, I'm sure, fantastic companies, but they're not designed to look after deal sellers and rent to renters. They're designed to look after estate agencies and letting agencies. And we were having students that were members of the PRS, for example, and the PRS, so basically the main thing the PRS does is they mediate, right? So if let's say you're a deal sourcer and you sell a deal to somebody, and the person that you sold the deal to says, I am not happy with your service, I'm not happy with the way you sold me the deal, I want my money back, and you say no, they can go above your head, if you're a member of the PRS, to the PRS. So it's kind of like an in-between stage before taking someone to court. So they can go to the PRS and they can say, right, we're not happy with this deal sourcer who is a member of your service as PRS. And the PRS will come in, they'll investigate, and then they'll make a decision. And you, as a member of the PRS, have to do what the PRS say. And if you don't, they will blacklist you and take you off, which is a bad thing, because if you have to be a member legally to act as a deal seller, and the PRS kick you out, you can no longer deal sell, so you've lost your whole business. So they've got a lot of power over you. You really have to do exactly what they say.
But they're not designed, or they're not suited for deals.
Well, this is the thing, right? So we were having students coming to us and saying, look, this is the situation, and the PRS have told me I need to pay them X amount of money. 18 grand was one of the situations, even though they hadn't even took 18 grand from the person. What?
The PRS wanted 18 grand?
Not to pay the PRS, to pay this deal source's customer.
Right,
because basically the customer had bought the deal, spent money on it, and then decided that they weren't happy with the deal.
So then that was like reimbursed.
All the money back.
Right.
And the PRS said, you've got to pay the 18 grand, or we're gonna blacklist you, and you won't be able to sell deals. And we were thinking, this is like crazy, because they seem to, because I don't think they totally understand deal selling and rent to rents, they seem to act against the deal seller, against the rent to renter, making it very difficult, which is why we investigated this. So we looked into it, and what we found was, if you use the correct contracts, and if you use for rent to rents and deal selling, you are not acting as an estate agent. You are not acting as a letting agent like we'd always suspected. So we got our solicitors to draw up contracts, and what we did was we set up PIMs to replace those services, not for letting agents, not for estate agents, because you legally have to be a member of those if you are a letting agent or estate agent, but PIMS is specifically for property entrepreneurs that have a rent-to-rent business. Maybe they want to do joint ventures, maybe they want to do rent-to-rents, whatever it is, and they can be a member of PIMS, and we'll represent them. So what it basically gives any PIMS member, in the same way the PRS gives estate agents, is it gives your customers confidence that you're not going to rip them off. Because one of the problems with the deal sourcing industry is there are a lot of sort of cowboys out there that sell deals, and they'll take your money and then they'll be unreasonable and won't give you money back. If you're a PIMS member, it means you've got, we've got trained mediators that work within PIMS that will oversee and just make sure that you're acting ethically. So it gives your customers the confidence if they buy a deal from you, you can't rip them off. Because if you sell them a duff deal and then refuse to give them the money back and they're a member of PIMS, you can come to us, we will look at it and we'll say, no, you need to refund them, otherwise we'll blacklist you from PIMS.
Yeah.
So it's that protection for deal sourcers and rent-to-renters. And what we wanted to do really was to give it to our students.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to see our students in a situation where they were being hard done to by PRS, they were being hard done to by the TPO. So we set it up for our students. So for all our Academy members, which is our top tier students, they get PIMS membership included for free. But you can also you can join. You don't have to be an Academy member. Anyone can join.
So
PIMS.
can someone be a member of PIMS even if they're not a student?
Yes, anyone can join PIMS. The website is thepims.co.uk. Anyone can go to be that. But if you are an Academy member, if you're one of our students, then you get it included for free while you're a member. Yeah.
Makes sense. And one of the questions that I get I'd say this is probably the most common question I get when we're at, we run £1 training programs, and people come up to me all the time and they say, I'm looking to get into deal source and I want to be setting up the business. And between now and, coming to meet you guys at the advanced training, I need to get everything in place. Do I need anti-money laundering?
Yeah, okay, good question. So normally, you won't need anti-money laundering registration if your cash transactions are below €10,000. So I think it's about £8,000. And that's per person or legal entity that you do business with. However, if you're not sure, you can go onto the government's website and you can do the anti-money laundering test, ask you a few questions which you can answer, and it will tell you whether or not you need anti-money laundering. But most deal sources and rent-to-renters won't need it. Because anti-money laundering really is to stop you from taking large cash payments that you don't know where it came from, and processing it through your business, which is helping. So let's say you've got a drug dealer who's sold loads of drugs and they've got cash and they want to get rid of the cash, right? It's hard to get rid of lots of cash. So they want to discourage companies accepting loads of cash when they don't know where it comes from.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
Normally you won't, but you might do. It depends on your business. And in the same way, there's other things, insurance. Do you need, a lot of people ask, do you need insurance? A lot of people will say, you need to have public liability insurance, or you need to have public indemnity insurance to be a deal seller or to do rent-to-rents. Well, legally, you don't. Now, it might be that it's advisable to get the insurances. There's certain insurances that are legal requirements, like car insurance.
Yeah, if you have a car, you need the insurance.
Legally, you have to have insurance. You can't just think, I'll chance it.
Yeah.
Right? With rent-to-rents and deal selling, you can just chance it. So what it might be, in business in general, a lot of people get worried about the setup, and they spend ages. You've probably seen companies do it with like logos, for example. It's like, I need the perfect logo, I need the perfect website, I need the perfect name, and they do all these things that stop them from actually going out and setting up the business.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, when I'm training people, I don't want them to get bogged down in compliance, right? So if you're a PIMS member, that's probably all the compliance that you need, right? And then you don't have to worry about it. What you can worry about is going and finding good deals. What you can worry about is going and finding investors or going and finding landlords that want to offer you rent-to-rents. That's the stuff you should be focusing on, not the insurances. Now, once you've sold a few deals, it might be wise to go and get insurance. But if you're setting up a brand new company and you don't legally need insurance and you haven't sold any deals yet, what's the point in getting insurance?
Yeah.
Right now. And once you start selling deals, then go and get the insurance and use the money from the deals. I think, right?
Makes sense. And a lot of people that start off with deal sourcing, or start off with rent-to-rent, what we tend to see happen is they'll do some deal sourcing, they'll do some rent-to-rent. A lot of our students will get results with a strategy, and then they'll look to scale up and work on other strategies. And sometimes people focus on deal sourcing, they come across a rent-to-rent opportunity, and because they've been trained, they know how to do it, they'll take on the rent-to-rent. Now, taking on a rent-to-rent and doing deal sourcing, and if you're investing in properties, whatever strategies you're doing, you often want to have separate companies for liability purposes and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So when you do set up new companies, you'll often have to register each company for the PRS and different insurances, because if you have one company and you're registered with a redress scheme, that redress scheme will cover you for that one company.
Yeah.
So if you have a new company, you'll need to register that new company for the redress scheme, and each company will be covered with a different policy.
Yeah.
Is that the same with PIMS? How does it work with PIMS with different companies?
Yeah, sure. Well, that was one of the things that because we were doing this primarily for our students, we wanted to give the best service possible. And like you say, we encourage having a separate company for your deal sourcing, for your rent-to-rents, even sometimes, with our developments, we have different companies for each development that we do, right? And you want to structure it in that way. So we didn't want to sort of penalise people for setting up the structure of their business in the correct way. And you're totally right. Normally, you'd have to have one set of insurance or one set of PRS membership for this company and another for this company and so on and so forth. What we wanted to do with PIMS is represent the person, because we're dealing with people. It's always a people business, right? We want to represent the person rather than the company, which means, let's say you, for example, had a deal sourcing company, 2 joint venture companies with 2 different people, and a rent-to-rent company. You would only need 1 membership. That would cover you. You wouldn't need to get a membership for each different company. It's a little bit like an AA. Do you know with AA?
Yeah.
The AA cover you, the person. So
Yeah.
I've got AA membership. If I'm driving my car, I'm covered. If I'm driving my wife's car, I'm covered. If I was driving your car, I'd be covered. If we were out together and your car broke down and I was with you, I'd be covered because they're covering me.
That would never happen. I wouldn't let you drive my car.
Well, what if you were driving it and I was just a passenger?
Oh, does it cover you for that?
Yeah.
Just being a passenger?
Just being a passenger. If I'm there, if I break down wherever I am, or at least it used to be, don't quote me on this if you join the AA, but this is my understanding of the AA. I'm not an AA expert, right? But as far as my understanding is, if I'm in your car with you and I break down, you're covered because you've got me with
I
you.
wonder if anyone breaks down on the road, and if they break down, they're not a member. Oh, I'm trying to think. Have I ever seen someone holding up a sign saying, "Anyone a member of the AA, please help."
please pull over. Yeah, no one's going to do it though, because then you have to wait. Like last time I did break down. I say I broke down. Kind of crashed. Kind of a breakdown. Crashed so badly I couldn't move the car.
You broke down, which led to a crash.
No, I crashed, and the wheel would no longer turn because I crashed the car.
So the crash came first.
The crash came first.
Right.
But I still needed help. I still needed.
Right.
I still needed to recover. And the AA took like hours to get to me. Like I googled it, and apparently RAC are even worse. My brother-in-law was in RAC, and he came around here, and his car broke down, and then he had to go home, right? And his home is in the Midlands, so it's like a 2-hour drive. So about 4:00, he called RAC. And he said, "Hey, can you come and get me?" They were like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. We'll be with you about 10:00. And he was like, "Oh my goodness, like it's 4:00 now. It's 6 hours. Imagine if he..." And they thought that he was. Is that your phone?
Yeah, I think it's the RAC.
It's the RAC calling. They're like, "Stop telling the story." And he was like, they thought he was just on the side of the road and they're prepared to leave him for 6 hours, right? So he waits till 10:00, no one's here. He rings them. "Oh yeah, sorry. It's actually going to be midnight that we get to you." He was like, "Midnight? This is like crazy." So he's like, "Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll wait till midnight." Midnight comes, still not here. He calls them. "Yeah, sorry. Someone should be with you about 2 a.m. But we're not going to be able to take you all the way home because it's too far for us to go. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take you halfway and then get someone else to pick you up, take the rest of the way."
I'm just a little bit confused as to why he was here and you're here. You were here, right?
Yeah.
So did you not just say to him, "Do you know what, actually just stop over here and sort it out tomorrow"?
Yeah, but he still needs to get his car sorted at some point, doesn't he?
I just got this vision.
And I'm in
like,
bed at this point.
What? And he's out on the porch just waiting for the AC.
I let him stay in the house. I didn't like kick him out on the street. Sorry, bro. It's 8 o'clock.
That's it. What time will it be? About midnight. All right, I'm going to bed. Hopefully you get it fixed.
Yeah, he was in the guest room. He was okay. He was sorted, right? So anyway, they arrived here at 2. I know because I heard the front door shut. I looked out the window. I saw him walking
You got
down.
out of your comfy bed with your pajamas on and looked out the window, make sure he was all right.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I saw him walking out, and he gets the RACs here, right? So they took him from here to about 40 minutes away, and they were like, "This is as far as we'll take you." Dumped him off at the side of the road, and said, "The next RAC will be here soon." 2 hours later, right, it's now 4 a.m. 2 hours later, the next RAC picks him up, takes him to Oxford, dump him out, and said, "Next one's going to be with you at 6 a.m." Right? So,
it's horrible.
So he rang them up and he was like livid. He said, "I'm not waiting." He goes, "I'm going to catch a taxi back and I want you to pay for it." So eventually they agreed. So he got a taxi back, got back about 7 a.m.
Right when you were waking up.
So, right, nah.
You were waking up, fresh sleep.
No, I had about another hour. At 8 a.m. I woke up. So he got back, about 7 a.m. All from 4 o'clock the next day to 7 a.m. So I don't know what my point is here.
Well, it sounds like a rough ride. So I guess my question is, that sounded horrendous.
Yep.
And it sounded uneasy, not simple, and horrible. If someone wants to become a member of PIMS and they've got a company ready to go and they want to get covered, how simple, how easy is it to get a policy number and get covered?
Yeah, super easy. So, like I mentioned before, if you're one of our Academy members, you don't have to do anything. When you become an Academy member, we automatically give you PIMS membership. If you're a PIMS member, if you want to become a PIMS member and you're not one of our students, you can just go to our website, thepims.co.uk, and you can just apply on there. It's minutes. But more importantly, because I'm sure the RAC is easy to join. More importantly, what's the service like when you actually need help?
What's the service like?
So, I mean, to be fair, we're obviously representing our members, right? But it's only, hopefully you'll never need us. You'll get all the contracts that you need, because it's very important that you use the correct contracts. So we've had the contracts drawn up for joint ventures. So if you're doing a joint venture, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is doing joint ventures and not using a contract.
It's terrible.
It's shocking, and you'd think, but it happens all the time. I trusted them because, I'd met them a few times at an event, and it's like, what are you thinking? Going into a joint venture on any deal without using a contract. So you get that, included your PIMS membership. You get the correct rent-to-rent contract, which means that that basically says you're not acting as a letting agent. If you use the wrong contract, then you probably would need to be a member of the PRS. So if you use PIMS, you're fine. You get our contracts, you get the rent-to-rent contract, you get a deal-selling contract.
Oh wow!
So you get everything, you get all that included straight away, and then you'll only ever need us if one of your customers says that you acted unfairly. But what I think is great about it is one of the worst things about running a business. I've run lots of businesses. Is dealing with unhappy customers, and you're always going to have unhappy customers. Obviously, the better you are, the less you'll have. But however good you are, any company in the world is going to have. If you look at their Trustpilot, for example, they're going to have some 1-star reviews, because there's always some people that are never ever happy.
Can't please everyone.
You can't please everyone. So however good you are, however good a rent-to-renter you are, however good a deal seller you are, whatever it is that you do, however good a joint venture partner you are, you're always going to have someone that's unhappy with you. And dealing with that is such a headache. I hate dealing with unhappy people. I like focusing on happy people and good customers, and that's where I want to put my focus on positive things. But you have to deal with it, because if you don't deal with it, it gets worse, right? So if you get someone come to you and sort of say, "Hey, I'm not happy with the deal, I want a refund," and you investigate it, there's two things you're going to do. You're either going to investigate it and think, "Oh yeah, fair enough, we messed up." That happens. You give them their money back, everyone's happy. Or you look at it and go, "We did absolutely nothing wrong here," which is a more difficult situation, because now what do? If you didn't mess up and you did everything right, but they're still unhappy, what do? Well, you've got to go back and forth. You could either refund them anyway, but then you're a pushover, or do you say no, and then they start trolling you online?
Yeah.
Like, what do? So if you're a PIMS member, you'll just say, "Look, we don't think that you deserve a refund. However, we're a member of PIMS. It's part of your complaints procedure. We're a member of PIMS. Go and speak to them. So then they will come to us and they'll say, hey, we're really unhappy with Ricky Mandal. Ricky Mandal sold us this deal and it was terrible. And then one of our trained mediators will look at it. They'll look at the evidence from the customer. They'll look at the evidence from you. And then they'll make a decision and they'll say, look, we think, Ricky, I'm sorry, but we think you did mess up. We want you need to give them a refund and then you'd have to do it. Or we might say, Ricky, you did absolutely nothing wrong. Sorry, Mr. Customer, that we've looked at it fairly and objectively, and we think that Ricky acted perfectly reasonable and you're not owed a refund. And then they've got a choice. Then they can still take you to court. It's not like 100%. You're absolutely, untouchable if PIMS say yes. But if you're part of a body like that, the court case will look at all our evidence. Right, and they'll go, okay. So someone independently has already looked at this, and it makes it much more difficult for the person. So it's a really good service, and it saves you the headache in situations where you don't think you've messed up. Someone else will deal with the customer for you.
Yeah.
Which allows you again to carry on focusing on the things you should be focusing on, like finding more deals, selling more deals, whatever it is that you're doing, the stuff that's exciting that actually makes you money, rather than dealing with the headaches.
So if you're a deal sourcer or you're a renter and you're getting into property, I would highly recommend, based off what I've heard, I mean, I'm sold.
You're brand new, you don't know anything, you're clueless.
I'm like a clean slate, but now I feel like I'm a part of PIMS now. It's brilliant. So if you're looking at getting into property and you're looking at rent and deal sourcing, make sure you go and check out PIMS and have a look into it at the website, which is
thepims.co.uk. The other thing I'd recommend as well, on the other side, if you are buying deals off someone, for example, make sure they're a member. It doesn't have to be PIMS, but make sure they're a member of PRS, TPO, or PIMS, so you have got some protection. Because like I mentioned earlier, there are lots of cowboys out there in the space, and legally they don't have to be a member of an organisation like that. So make sure that you check that they are to protect yourself if you're buying deals. We always say to our PIMS members, only do business with other PIMS members.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll come to us and go, oh, I bought a deal off this person. And are they a PIMS member? Well, no, they're not a PIMS member.
And we tell them to make it...
You messed up then.
We tell them to make it transparent as well. If you're a deal sourcer, we tell our academy members, put your PIMS policy number, your PIMS logo and stuff on your emails and your website, so people can see you're a part of it. It gives you some credibility as well.
Of course. And I genuinely wouldn't buy a deal from someone who wasn't. I wouldn't buy a deal from someone who wasn't a PIMS member.
It's risky, isn't it?
Oh, I'm not protected.
No.
They could just say no, and then I'm not going to take them to court for $3,000 or what. The hassle involved in going for us, you're just going to lose the money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you need protection.
Are we still talking PIMS?
We hope you found that useful. My name's Ricky Mandal.
My name's Russell Leeds.
And we'll see you next time.